The Crusaders have pipped the Highlanders in the second Southern Derby of 2025. This game was a much closer affair to their last meeting back in round 11 about a month ago, where the Crusaders absolutely pants the Highlanders 43-10 in Dunedin. Despite the Highlanders having a couple chances to win the game from the penalty tee, they missed both of those kicks, handing the Crusaders a close 15-12 win, meaning the Crusaders sit second, still on the table, but a point off the top of the table Chiefs, with only one round left in Super Rugby. The Highlanders bottom of the table, and very much their playoff hopes all but gone, particularly when they lost that game as well. And they could have had the chance, if they won the game, to have closed that gap to the top six, but unfortunately that wasn't meant to be. I'm Nick from Nickn'detail, and today I'm going to be reviewing the Crusaders Highlanders game, which took place in Christchurch last Friday evening. So let's get into it. That's right, when you look back at the last Southern Derby about a month ago, you thought maybe will we see the same outcome here. The Crusaders, who have been flying high this season in Super Rugby, while the Highlanders have been very much the team that have shown promise but have fallen just short. I think that's probably the best way you can sum up the Highlanders season so far. And this game, like the one against the Hurricanes in Wellington, was once again a very close affair where they could have actually taken the spoils in this game as well. That would be the Crusaders that would claim a close fought 15-12 win, meaning that the Crusaders now sit a point behind the Chiefs on second and the top of the table compared to, of course, the two teams and their gap. And the Highlanders unfortunately remain bottom of the table, and now their playoffs hopes all but gone, as they're 8 points off sixth place Moana Pacifica. Of course, that top six is where you need to be heading in to the Super Rugby finals, which only start next weekend. So what are my thoughts on this game? This was a very tight game, as you can tell by the scoreline. I don't even just say it was a tight game. You can just look at the scoreline and say this game was a tight game. And this was great because we all thought maybe coming to this game, as I said earlier, that this might have been a completely different story of how these two teams have shaped up this season. But I think this was very much a tale of two halves. I think that's probably the closest sort of comparison you can get to this game. I mean, the Crusaders very much dominated that first half and were very much well-deserving leaders throughout that first half. But the Highlanders just at the end of that first half, and I guess that's probably why I said this is probably your only comparison you can get, because the Highlanders at the end of that first half and in the early second half were very much the better team. In fact, I certainly believe the Highlanders were the better team in that second half. That is despite the Crusaders obviously scoring that try, while the Highlanders, of course, had to work a bit more for those points. And that's the same for the Crusaders as well, don't get me wrong on that statement. But you thought based on the points, thought maybe the Crusaders were the better team, but no, certainly the Highlanders showed their class in that second half, and once again just showing how good this young team has been this season. Yes, they're bottom of the table. Yes, they've been miles off the chasing pack this season, but I think at the same time, give this team another year or so in Super Rugby, as I've said in earlier videos, and this team in a couple of years can very much be challenging for titles. I certainly believe this Highlanders team has shown great promise that they can bring titles down to Dunedin in the coming years of Super Rugby competition. But yeah, unfortunately, we saw once again just the Highlanders not being able to execute late or defend late. I think that's what cost them against the Hurricanes. It's what costed them here against the Crusaders. And of course, as I said, they had a few opportunities from the kicking tee to actually get those 3 points. And had they nailed at least one of them, they would have sent that into golden point. In fact, substitute first five, Cam Miller had the chance to send it into golden point heading into the last couple. Well, in fact, it was actually in at a time, I should say, rather, end of regulation time in the 80th minute. And of course, that dragged wide, sealing the Crusaders 15-12 win. But this could have been maybe a whole different game had that game gone into golden point. In fact, if the Highlanders even kicked their earlier penalty, which they missed very much early in that second half phase, they could have actually pipped that game and very much deserved to win that match. And unfortunately, that just wasn't meant to be. I think the Crusaders, again, just showing their resilience and their determination to not concede points. And very much this game was a great sum up of what a derby should be like in New Zealand. A Southern derby, very much wiping clean what happened in a few months, or about a month ago in Dunedin, I should say. And yeah, very much summing up what a Southern derby should be like. So yeah, even though the Crusaders were probably the better team in the first half, I think the Highlanders were very much the better team in the second half, and probably from that deserved to win this game. So you once again, as this season has been, they've shown promise, but just fallen just short right at the end when they've really needed to come in with those points to win the game. So who was my standout player? Well, I'm actually going to give a shout out this week to Sevu Reece. Now, he only got a try, so obviously you're saying, well, why are you giving a guy a shout out who only scored a try? But Sevu Reece has now broken the all-time Super Rugby try scoring record. Originally, it was held by TJ Perenara from the Hurricanes, well, of course, formerly of the Hurricanes. Of course, he's in Japan now playing his rugby. But 65 tries he had that currently held the Super Rugby record. And Sevu Reece actually was tied on 65 tries coming in to this matchup. But of course, his try early in the first half, ensuring that he is now the all-time Super Rugby try scoring record holder of 66 tries. So a big congratulations to Sevu Reece, and very much why he's my standout player. But also not just because of that, because he's actually been a great player as well this season, as he has been over the years as well, since he's been a Crusader. And this is a man who very much a few years ago, before the last World Cup just gone, he was a bit in and out of the All Blacks. He had his injury problems, and that didn't really help him. And obviously other, I guess, alternative options in that team. But I think very much with his performances this season, and of course being that he hasn't actually had any injuries to date, which has been really good news for him, very much been able to cement his spot back in the All Blacks, and particularly with the likes of Mark Taylor and that now leaving after this year, I think they will only, very much cement his spot in that All Black team under Scott Robertson, and of course a former Crusaders coach as well, so that of course link up very vital here. But yes, I think Sevu Reece very much showing why he's very much one of the best players. I wouldn't say I put him the best, but very much one of the best players to come through New Zealand rugby, and a well-deserved Super Rugby try scoring record holder. So he's my stand-up player, and actually did score a try. I did have a good game as well against the Highlanders. So Sevu Reece is my stand-up player for this match. So what's next for both teams? Well, both these teams have their final games of Super Rugby regular season, and actually in general, it is the final regular season round of Super Rugby for 2025. As I said earlier in the intro, the playoffs for the finals start next week. For the Crusaders, they're actually off to Canberra to take on the Brumbies. Now, the Brumbies only sit third and only a few points behind them. So, of course, they can't really afford to go there and lose, because that could very much cost them second place. And, of course, the higher you can be, the better. You get the easier teams in the finals. But also, if the top seed gets knocked out, that means you get the home finals going into the, the semis, the finals, etc. So this will not be an easy game for the Crusaders. The Brumbies, once again, proving to be a strong force over in Australia. Canberra, very much their home fortress there at GIO Stadium. And yeah, that's going to be a very great game. That's Friday night, about 9:35 our time. And for the Highlanders, they're actually home for their final game of the season. They host the Chiefs. And of course, the Chiefs, top of the table, very much determined to seal that top spot going into the Super Rugby finals. Of course, coming off a 85-7 thrashing of Moana Pacifica. And of course, as I said, the Highlanders, had they won that game, could have closed that gap to 4 points, and of course could very much still be within that playoff distance. It's so tight, as I've said a few videos ago, where that very much, even in that top six, though, 4th to 6th, but even 6th down to 11th, it's only a few points in it. And the Highlanders, had they even just won one of those games, they could still be within contention of that top 6. But unfortunately, of course, that's not going to happen now, because, of course, they lost this game to the Crusaders. But yes, for the Highlanders, they hosted the Chiefs, and I think based on the last performance, I think they can still certainly, cause trouble. I believe the Chiefs will not have it easy going down to dead under the roof at Forsyth Bar, but I believe the Chiefs will also be very determined to seal that top spot. So this will not be an easy game for the Highlanders. That's on Friday night too, 7:05 kickoff our time, and what promises to be a great game, particularly if the Highlanders keep those performances going as they showed against the Hurricanes, and then just now the Crusaders. They can certainly cause trouble for teams. And as I said earlier, and I've said it a few times already, they can very much be challenging for titles over the next year or two. They've got such a great young side coming through. Just that more experience they get will very much put them in a good position in the next couple of years also. So that's going to be it for me. A great Southern Derby this was, very much, as I said, should be how derbies should be played. Obviously, a game very much of two halves, but yeah, very unlucky for the Highlanders, just to fall short. Again, I very much think they were the deserved winners out of this match, but the Crusaders again just showing just how much they've changed this season compared to last. And yeah, heading into their next game, it will certainly be interesting to see how they'll be able to turn up against a Brumby side that, of course, have also been very solid this season as well. But for the Highlanders as well against the Chiefs, that's going to be an interesting match up too. So yeah, should be interesting to see how those games play out. But for me, that's going to be it. And until next time, I'll see you later.